Jerry helped us deal with the emptiness. It was very hard not having a place for people to sit.
They didn't have any furniture.
We went to Big Lots, and my heart pitter-pattered.
It pitter-pattered. Who knew you could get a $450 sofa for $300?
And $100 end tables for $50. The world is full of so much emptiness. That's why Big Lots has furniture. Right, honey?
Big Lots. Brand names, closeout prices, happy people.
No TV of mine will ever sit on a milk crate again.
Big Lots. Or I guess I should say Big Lots, because they have an exclamation point at the end of it. Is an American big box chain that specialized, it's actually kind of weird saying this based on what I know, but they were supposed to specialize in the sale of closeout and overstock merchandise, therefore getting it for quite a deal themselves, and therefore allowing them to sell at a much lower price than a lot of other places would. But if you've been paying attention recently, you know that's, in the process of changing. Big Lots declared bankruptcy in October of 2024. Just a few months ago as of this recording. And though at first they attempted to reorient themselves, in December 2024, they announced they planned on ceasing all operations, liquidating their inventory and assets, and close every single Big Lots store down. What the heck happened? Well, it's not super complicated, and it wasn't entirely mismanagement, though that was part of it. But let's start at the beginning, as we always do. Big Lots goes all the way back to 1967, with the formation of what was known as the Consolidated Stores Corporation in Ohio. As the name might imply, it was kind of a corporation that owned a whole bunch of different stores, and they saw some success over the years, but where Big Lots becomes relevant. But in terms of the precise history of Big Lots, we have to jump 15 years in the future to 1982. It was that year that Consolidated opened their first closeout store, which they dubbed Odd Lots. Yes, really, they called it odd. Not really maybe people like the name, I don't know. I feel like most people wouldn't use the word odd as a compliment, but hey, that's what they went with. The first one of those opened in Columbus, Ohio, and just the following year, the drugstore chain Revco purchased an entirely different New Jersey closeout retailer, known as the Odd Lot Trading Company. This sort of name crossover caused a bit of an issue, because Revco didn't like the fact that Consolidated had a store that was, the same name basically, selling the same stuff. No, we're not gonna do that. But instead of suing each other, they fell into a bit of an arrangement. Basically, Consolidated promised to limit their use of the Odd Lots name only to stores that were located within a certain range of Columbus, Ohio. They never went beyond there. Beyond that radius, though, Consolidated did open new stores, but under a different name. In that case, they used the term Big and Small Lots. But over time, this became, frankly, annoying. Because, they wanted to unite the brand. They wanted to operate off of one thing, so people knew what they expected, especially when they started expanding because they were doing well. So eventually, they rebranded everything to simply Big Lots, rendering the name dispute pretty much irrelevant. Regardless, under whichever name we're talking about, they were doing pretty well in this particular store format. It was a big box outlet, sure, but they specialized in a lot of really low-priced closeout things. Stuff that hadn't sold elsewhere. Now that sounds like it might be bad, but in many cases, companies wind up with excess inventory. That's where places like Big Lots stepped in. They would purchase the unsold merch and put it in their own store, generally at a much lower price. So even if you missed something that might have been available at Walmart last week, it might be at Big Lots now, because, they bought the rest. And this particular business model does work. It has been proven, and Big Lots saw significant success over the years. Though we're operating under the Consolidated umbrella, and in the 90s, they started wanting to invest in toys. They acquired Toy Liquidators in 1994, and in 96, they got a hold of KB Toys. Big Lots, however, was their bread and butter. That was their largest chain by a considerable margin, and Big Lots Incorporated in 1998 would purchase McFrugal's, otherwise known as Pick and Save. They were once the second largest closeout retail chain in the United States. Big Lots got a hold of their assets for $995 million, nearly $1 billion in stock, not cash, but still, yo! And they converted all the remaining McFrugals into the Big Lots brand name. The toy thing is kind of a weird venture for them, because it didn't really pan out that well. Consolidated wound up selling off KB Toys, as well as the Toy Liquidators, to Bain Capital in the year 2000. And in 2001, they would stop using the Consolidated name altogether, changing themselves to just Big Lots Inc. But it was about that same time that Big Lots started running into trouble. They were losing money. What the heck was going on? Well, it was a few things. It's the early 2000s, and all brick-and-mortar retailers are feeling the squeeze from the internet. But in Big Lots' case, that wasn't quite the problem, because Big Lots invested heavily in things like home furniture, decorations, apparel, things like that. Stuff that you could buy online, but back in the early 2000s, most people didn't buy, like, their sofa on the internet. It just wasn't a thing. I mean, it was. You could do it, but a lot of people like to test out their furniture before they buy it, you know? So, what was really happening? Well, it was the internet, yes, that was putting a stranglehold on some of their smaller merchandise, but in terms of the furniture, it was other competition. People just didn't always go to Big Lots. They didn't have a lot of brand loyalty surrounding them. Most individuals would shop around for furniture, and while Big Lots had invested heavily in furniture, and that was great, people didn't always go to them for it. It didn't help that Big Lots is, well, by definition, supposed to be a close-out retailer, and therefore selling off things at a really good price. But they found in many cases, a lot of their competition was undercutting them in this particular category, which really should not be happening at all. Big Lots, over time, started being seen as actually kind of expensive, which is like the opposite of what you're supposed to be going for. And their merchandise was very limited, because they had pushed the furniture stuff so far. That's fine. But that means that if someone is undercutting the price of that particular category, why would anyone go to you? There'd be no reason to. And indeed, this started hurting them as time went on. And a lot of the other stuff that wasn't furniture could be gotten elsewhere for even cheaper. Like, one of their major competitors was stuff like Dollar General. They attempted to diversify their inventory into grocery items, oddly enough, likely sticking with the home element because people needed groceries for their house. Neato. Never met a person who went to frickin' Big Lots for the groceries, okay? That didn't happen. And even when they did have grocery items, places like Aldi's and, well, Walmart often had the same groceries for a lot cheaper because, well, in Walmart's case especially, they had plenty of other stuff they could sell for a profit while you were in there getting your groceries. Most people didn't buy a sofa and milk and eggs at the same time. That's a pretty rare combination of events. I mean, maybe someone's done it. I'm sure someone's going to comment and be like, actually, I did that exactly one time in my 50 years of life on this planet. But the point is, it doesn't happen every day. In the latter part of 2005, they wound up closing down 170 stores in an attempt to save money, which included every single freestanding Big Lots furniture specialty store. Which, yes, they did have an alternate Big Lots furniture, which is hilarious because regular Big Lots sold furniture. Why would you separate the... And throughout the 2010s, nothing got better. Pretty much everything they tried to add to the stores, well, didn't really help them, because frankly, even though they were supposed to be a closeout and overstock merchandise retailer, somehow they couldn't sell things as cheaply as other places could. It likely had to do with plenty of their competitors, again, Walmart, selling things at a loss on purpose just to bring people into their establishments. Big Lots never was able to do this, and even if they did, people just didn't really go to them for browse buying. If they went to Big Lots, they were there to buy, say, a piece of furniture. That's great and all, but it's not going to keep the entire company afloat, and it didn't. By October of 2023, it was reported that Big Lots was nearing a potential bankruptcy filing. They closed down 52 more stores that year. And in July of 2024, they announced the closure of between 35 to 40 underperforming locations nationwide, which they blamed on inflation, which, okay, but I don't see Walmart really feeling the squeeze in this regard. I don't think that's the problem, guys. I mean, maybe, because in an inflated economy, furniture sales generally do take a significant hit because, well, it's getting more expensive, and furniture's one of those things where, like, okay, say you want a new couch, but do you need a new couch? Yeah, the old one is really rough. Yeah, it's got some tears. Yeah, it's got some old stains on it, but also, you don't need to replace it right now. And when people are struggling, they're gonna keep the old stuff until it literally falls apart. Plus, one of their other strategies for staying afloat, and I still can't believe they were doing this, they were actually opening new locations as recently as 2022. Now, you might be saying, wait a minute, they were opening new locations when they're struggling? Why would you? Well, here was the logic. See, they opened 56 stores in 2022, but closed 62. The logic here is that they were trying to position their stores in more profitable areas and closing down places that weren't doing so hot. Reasonably, that does seem to make some level of sense. Also, you're still getting all these leases, and you're closing down underperforming locations, opening new ones. People have to find the new ones, and then they have to go in and actually buy stuff. Like, you're not really actually saving any money at all. And the other thing about Big Lots was their image. It wasn't just that they couldn't undercut the price of their competitors. It was also people associated with them, well, being a little high-end. Which sounds strange, but here was the issue. It was all optics. If you walked into a Big Lots, heck, while they're still open, briefly they're going through liquidation, but while you still can, you can walk into a Big Lots, and you'll find it's very nice in there. A lot of other similar clearance retailers weren't actually like this. You'd walk into them and they'd feel dingy and old, but they'd have a lot more stuff than a Big Lots, and often for cheaper, because those places didn't bother with the optics because they knew what they were about. Big Lots modeled themselves almost like Target, but with merchandise that was supposed to be cheaper. Like, it doesn't make any... No, these two things do not go together, guys. So people associated them with being more expensive, even when they weren't. Plus, keeping up with the imaging, well, that's expensive. I'm not saying they should have let the stores go into the gutter completely in terms of visual. I mean, you had to make them look somewhat presentable, but in their particular market, it wasn't as needed to make them look as nice as they were. And they did. But anyway, all of this combined into their bankruptcy. They had been open with their investors and had warned everyone that they probably wouldn't be able to survive the rest of 2024 if things didn't change. And things didn't change. In the first quarter of 2024, net sales had decreased over 10% compared to the first quarter of 2023, which already hadn't been good anyway. By the end of July, they reported they would close up to 315 stores, bare minimum, but that wouldn't have been enough to keep them afloat, and eventually they must have realized this. They searched for options to avoid a potential bankruptcy filing, but it just never happened. On September 9th, 2024, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protections, and in order to reorient themselves, what they initially planned to do was sell themselves off to Nexus Capital Management. This strategy has been seen before, and it sometimes can help, at least for a while. Basically, get another big investor to inject a whole bunch of money into the company, and hope that things can improve. But in this case, that never happened, because Nexus didn't buy them. On December 19th, Big Lots would announce that they didn't actually think they were going to be able to close a sale to Nexus. For whatever reason, the negotiations just fell flat. Perhaps Nexus didn't want to pay as much as Big Lots wanted, or decided that they were simply going to be investing in a sinking ship. Maybe they weren't confident in the future business reorientation plans, or whatever it may have been, Nexus didn't buy them. And without that, they had no choice but to liquidate, closing all of their remaining 963 stores. And based on that, you may think Big Lots is going away, but maybe not quite. Admittedly, I might be jumping the gun on even making this video because, well, they're still in the liquidation phase. Anything can change in the future when it comes to the Big Lots brand. In particular, on December 27th, they did reach an agreement with Gordon Brothers to transfer the operation of up to 400 of the remaining stores, as well as 2 of their own distribution centers, to Variety Wholesalers, a privately held company based in Henderson, North Carolina. They own more than 380 retail stores in the southeast of the United States. As I'm recording this now, again, this is all subject to change, but as I'm speaking now, Variety Wholesalers plans to continue operating those 400 locations and retain the Big Lots brand name, so they're not even re-imaging anything. As for how they're going to manage them in the future, or what other changes they're going to make, I obviously can't say because I don't know. But it is possible, if there's any Big Lots fans out there, that you may still have your Big Lots wherever you're at. It's possible the brand may be sticking around, but the original company appears to be folding. How long the brand will be with us, whether it will continue on, or be entirely in the past, still is something that only time will tell. And with that, a special thank you goes out to all my underwater train finders, Some Dude 267, Benjamin Owens, Anzac A1, Jack Carson's Rural Videos, Lord Off 444, Isurfer 1405, Charles Kwiatkowski, Matt Weaver, Tom Redline, Ennis Products 8104, Wheeljack 8401, Rescues Greyhounds, Josh Johnson, Killer Brain Waters, Prez Dreads, and Master of None, Travis Alinsky, JBL Explorers, Tommy Rossini, Ben McCullough, Panzer Kitsune 131-232, Mark Holding, Mr. Terrible, Hayden DeGrow, Kurt Forkham, Harry, Drew Debris, George Kenny, Kevin Wood, DeRauschie, William Nemo, Metal for Life Guy, Andrew Bowen, Crimson Rose, Ryan Wehofer, Zintek M, Boss K, Orange Glass, Andy, Ohio Trucker 1, Windy City Rails, John Videola, Extra Special J, Bob Condirk, Jared Brussel, Daryl Williams, DE Ultra, Connor Hahn, Brian Philly, Nathaniel Brown, Liam Wright, Mr. Sleepy, Rashad Austin, Westmost DFL Church, Profound Punk, The Baxter, Bad Train Puns Are Best, Raymond Zabo, AET Museum, Arthur Roy, Caleb Crosswhite, Jeff Sandroid, Taka Yamato, Andy Nick, Hendrick Motorsports Fan 5, Camo Guy 222, Jonathan Coco, SSM 316, Shimasu, NJ 1969, and of course, my dad. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell.